I knew something was wrong the second I saw my private property sign floating downstream like a dead leaf that had given up on life. Not leaning, not crooked, not knocked over by wind, floating. Face down, drifting slow through my creek like it had been gently escorted out of its own home. And in that exact moment, standing there in work boots with a cup of coffee going cold in my hand, I didn't even feel surprised. I just sighed and said out loud, to nobody, "All right, so it's going to be one of those weeks." My name's Caleb Mercer. I live just outside a little town in western North Carolina called Briar Hollow, tucked up where the trees get thick and the cell signal gets polite but distant. I bought my place 5 years ago, quiet little cabin, couple acres, and the real prize, a narrow creek that cuts behind the property line and curls through the woods like it's got somewhere important to be. The deed includes full creek rights, from the old stone bridge down to the bend with the sycamore. Every inch of that water, legally mine. Not shared, not community, mine. And I made sure everyone knew it when I moved in because I learned early people get funny about water, especially the kind of people who think a clipboard gives them moral authority. The Briar Ridge Homeowners Association sat just uphill from me, neat little rows of beige houses and manicured lawns. And running that whole operation was a woman named Marlene Crowley. Marlene was the type who smiled without ever using her eyes. Mid-50s, perfect highlights, always smelled like lavender and control issues. She walked like the ground owed her something, ran the HOA like it was a personal kingdom, and the rest of us were just renting space in her vision. We'd already had history. She once left me a 3-page notice because my mailbox was too rustic. Another time, she tried to fine me for stacking firewood in view of the community, even though the community couldn't see it unless they brought binoculars and a ladder. But the creek was different. That morning, after spotting my sign drifting like a lost canoe, I followed the water downstream, stepping over roots and rocks, already knowing I wasn't going to like what I found. And sure enough, there they were. Marlene, 2 of her board members, lawn chairs, a cooler, fishing lines in my water, a little Bluetooth speaker playing smooth jazz like they were on a spa retreat. She looked up when she heard me, slow, deliberate, that same practice smile sliding into place. "Well, hey, Caleb," she said, like we were old friends. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" I stared at her, then at the creek, then back at her. "You're on private property." Connie, one of her little sidekicks, rolled her eyes. "It's just a creek." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand it hurt. "Yeah," I said, "and it's just my land." Marlene waved a hand. "We had a board vote. We decided to open it up for community enjoyment." I blinked. "Slow. You don't get to vote on things you don't own." She tilted her head. "You're being difficult." That word, difficult. The way she said it, like I was a child refusing broccoli. Something in my chest tightened. Not anger, yet more like recognition. The kind you get when you realize someone has already decided who you are in their story, and you're not the hero. I told them again to leave. Calm. Clear. Marlene smiled, took a sip from her iced coffee, and said, "We'll be out of your way soon." Translation, no, we won't. So I turned around and walked back up to the cabin. Didn't argue. Didn't threaten. Because arguing with people like Marlene is like trying to reason with a cat that already knocked the glass off the counter. They're not confused, they're committed. But I had cameras. I installed them myself when I moved in. Buried the lines. Ran them to a private server. Not because I'm paranoid, because I grew up watching people get real bold when they think nobody's watching. I pulled up the creek feed, and that's when my stomach dropped. There they were. Not just fishing, not just sitting. 3 weeks earlier, Marlene and 2 guys from the HOA committee had come down with a chainsaw. My chainsaw, by the way, the one that used to hang in my shed. They cut down a dogwood. My dogwood. Dragged it to the side like it was yard waste. 2 days later, they spread gravel. Another day, they strung a rope swing off my sycamore. Then kids. Families. Beer cans. Coolers. It wasn't a visit. It was a takeover. I stood in my kitchen, watching strangers picnic in my creek like it was a park, and something shifted in me. That quiet, polite part that tries to keep the peace, it stepped back, and something colder took its place. I called the sheriff. Then I called my friend Lila Grant. Former prosecutor turned real estate attorney. Smart, sharp, and allergic to nonsense. I sent her the footage. Her response was immediate. Caleb, they just walked into 3 different felonies. By that afternoon, Deputy Morales was standing in my yard, arms crossed, watching the footage with his jaw set. Did you give them permission to be here? He asked. No. Did you give them permission to cut that tree? No, he nodded slowly. All right, we're past warnings. I watched his cruiser roll away and felt that strange mix of relief and dread. Because once you start pulling threads like this, you don't get to choose how far it unravels. That night, Lila called me back. I pulled the HOA filings, she said. Your property isn't even in their jurisdiction. I sat down. Hard. What? They've been fining you illegally. Sending notices without authority. This isn't just overreach, it's fraud. And just like that, the story changed. It wasn't about a creek anymore. It was about power. And people who had gotten real comfortable using it. And Marlene, she had no idea what she'd just started. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared, but because my brain wouldn't shut up. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that tree coming down. Heard the chainsaw. Watched strangers sit in my creek like they'd always belonged there. It's funny how violation doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it just feels wrong. Like someone moved something in your house, and you can't quite put your finger on it. By sunrise, I was already at my desk, printing stills from the footage. Timestamps, faces, angles. I labeled everything like a man building a case because that's exactly what I was doing. When you grow up around people who don't play fair, you learn early documentation is armor. By 9 a.m., Lila called. I'm filing an injunction, she said. Civil suit for damages, trespass, destruction of property. And I'm pulling their bylaws. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. How bad is it? She paused. That pause lawyers do when they're smiling but don't want to scare you. It's worse for them. By noon, Deputy Morales was back, this time with a clipboard and that look that says someone's about to have a very bad week. We're issuing citations, he said. Trespass, property damage, unlawful construction, endangerment of minors. I nodded. All of them, all of them. When he left, I stood on the porch watching dust settle in the driveway, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. Not victory. Not relief, but momentum. Like the wheel had finally started turning. The thing about HOA bullies is they rely on silence. They thrive on people being tired, confused, not wanting to rock the boat. And for years that had worked. Until it didn't. By the end of the day, word was already spreading. My neighbor Hank wandered over, leaning on his cane, squinting at me like I'd grown horns. You really got the sheriff involved? Yep. He whistled low. Marlene's gonna lose her mind. She already did, I said. I just gave it a reason. That evening, my phone started buzzing. Texts, calls. People I barely knew suddenly wanted to talk. One woman said the HOA had fined her for leaving her trash can out 10 minutes too long. Another guy said they threatened to lien his house over a broken fence they never gave him time to fix. It was like I'd flipped a switch. By the weekend, Lila had something new for me. I pulled their jurisdiction map, she said. And Caleb, they've been issuing notices to at least 7 properties that aren't legally under their control. Meaning this isn't sloppy. It's deliberate. That word again. Deliberate. I stared out at the woods, at the creek, at the space they tried to take, and something cold settled in my gut. Marlene hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a move. Monday morning, Lila attended the HOA emergency meeting as my legal representative. I didn't go. Didn't want the circus. But I could picture it. Folding chairs. Fluorescent lights. The smell of burnt coffee and fake authority. She called me after. I wish you could have seen her face, she said, laughing. When I slid the packet across the table, footage, boundary docs, legal notice, she went white. Did she say anything? She said you were being aggressive. I told her she was being investigated. Silence on the other end. Then I laughed. Not loud, not proud, just surprised. Because sometimes the bullies don't realize they're bullies until someone hits back. The fallout was fast. One board member resigned. Another took a leave. The rope swing disappeared overnight like it had never existed. The gravel path was half gone. Like they thought if they erased the evidence, the problem would too. But the problem was already bigger than my creek. 2 days later, a county zoning inspector showed up. Clipboard. Polite smile. He walked the boundary line with me, pointed out survey flags,